So kids, today we will discuss about your molecular compounds and your formula weights in their modes. So first, what is our formula weight? The formula weight of a substance is the sum of the atomic weights of the elements in the formula, each taken the number of times the element occurs. Hence, a formula weight gives the mass of one formula unit in AMUs, or your atomic mass units. Your formula weights, like the atomic weight on which they are based on, are relative masses. Again, your formula weights din siya yung basihan sa ato na atomic weights which we discussed sa ato na module 4 and module 5. And they are based on their relative nga masses. Kaya again, your weight are also your masses. The formula weight for your sodium hydroxide is NaOH. Again, the formula weight of your sodium hydroxide is NaOH, which ang sodium is Na and your OH stands for hydroxide. Again, this is your formula. Rounded off to the nearest 0.1 atomic mass units. Again, it is round off to 1 digit. And is found as follows. For example, lang ako na Na, ang iya nga formula weight, makita na ako na ang atomic mass unit sa ako na periodic table. So your Na. For every 1 Na, may ano ka kids? May hara ka sang 23 AMU. Tapos may hara siya subscript. Kung wala siya subscript, it is a constant of 1. So 1 times 23 atomic mass units is equals to 23. Para siya kids, so 23. Next, your hydrogen, nara naman sa oxygen naton. And your hydrogen, ara, H. Ang hydrogen ta kids is always 1. Kaya siya na ang pinakauna sa periodic table. So 1 times 1. And your oxygen has an atomic weight of 16 AMUs. Kung wala disang subscripts dalong kids, therefore it is a given na nga 1 ni siya, pero nga diri ang i-multiply sa iya. So the term formula weight, ari siya kids ang iya nga mass unit. So therefore ang total molecular formula weight sang aton na sodium hydroxide is therefore 40. Kay 23 plus 1 plus 16 is equals to 40. 23 plus 1 is 24. 4 plus 6 is 30, and 10 plus 30 is 40. Therefore, may 40 kang atomic mass unit. So, the term formula weight is correctly used for their ionic and molecular substances, meaning when you either solve for ionic and molecular substances, you may use your formula weight to correctly solve for its formula weight. When we refer specifically to molecular non-ionic substances, meaning molecular components ang ara, that is substances that exist as a discrete molecule, we often substitute the molecular weight to formula weight. So again, if they are non-ionic, meaning molecular compounds na sila, we use your formula weight, not your molecular weight. So for example, we calculate the formula weight of your acetic acid. Your acetic acid is CH3COOH. Ari man siya kids. So again, your acetic acid is CH3COOH. Using rounded values for atomic weights given in the international table for your atomic weight nga ihatag ko man sa inyo. Again, it is still in the periodic table of elements. So we add the atomic weights of the element in the formula, each multiplied by the number of times the element occurs. So, kids, basihan ta sa imong formula diri or ang ari man di kung paano ta i-solve ang aton na formula weight. Pila ka bilog aton na carbon, kids? 2 ka bilog. 1, 2. So may 2 ta carbon, i-multiply ta siya by its atomic mass unit, which is 12. Makita niya again sa ato na periodic table. 2 times 12 is equals to 24. Ngaman, nag-times 2 ko kids, kay 2 ang akon nga carbon. 2 akon carbon, kids. Next, we have your hydrogen. Pila ka bilog akon hydrogen? Ang H nakon kids, may ara sa subscript nga 3 ang isa. Ang isa naman kids, wala sang subscript, meaning 1 siya. So, 3 plus 1 is equals to 4. Meron naman ko 4 kabilog na hydrogen. Kaya again, ang number of subscripts nga ara dira, that represents the number of your element nga ara sa imo nga mixture. So for your acetic acid, may ara sa 1, 2, 3. Are 3 ni siyang subscriptedaan. This has 3 hydrogen at may ara ka pa hydrogen sa punta. Therefore, plus 1 for na hydrogen mo. So 4 times 1 is equals to 4 atomic mass units of your hydrogen. Next, you have pila naman ka oxygen kids sa ato na acetic acid. 1, 2. Meron ko 2 ka oxygen. So, for every 1 oxygen na kon kids, meron ko 16 nga atomic mass units. So, 16. Kay may 2 ka oxygen, i-times ko siya sa 2. Meron ko 32 atomic mass units. And simply, add all the atomic mass units you've gathered. And your final answer will be your formula weight. So, this is the formula weight of your acetic acid or your CH3COOH. CH3 COO. Next. So your table 2.5 shows your 1 mole of some common molecular substances. So again kids, like the same sa ato na module 5, for every 1 mole na akon kids, sa akon na common nga molecular substances, for example, akon na O2. Yara gid ko kids sang 6.022 or 6.02 times 10 raised to the power of 23. Kaya again, ang 1 mole mo is equals to always 6.022 times 10 raised to the power of 23 atoms of your given nga element. Again, for every 1 mole ni naton. So for example, ang akon nga oxygen kids, it has a molecular weight of 32. So the sample mass with a mass of 32 grams of your O2. And for every 1 mole sang ako na O2 molecule, mayara ko kids, 6.022 times 10 raised to the power of 23 molecules of your O2 or your oxygen. So this is just a sample in your table 2.5 of the common molecular substances that we have, and ano yung equivalent to moles for every substance. Kaya may ara kita may 1 mole man ta na. 1 mole ta is equivalent to 6.022 times 10 raised to the power of 23. So the amount of substance that contains the mass in grams numerically equal to its formula weight in EMU. And it contains 6.022 times 10 raised to the power of 23 of your formula units, or 1 mole of the substance. Again, ang aton kids nga substance na ara sa mass sa grams ang aton na formula weight always contains for every one formula weight mo, may ara ka sa 6.022 times 10 raised to the power of 23 to raise to the power of 23 of your formula units. So malagay siya simple intindihan, or it is also equivalent, kaya again ang amonin naton kids is always equivalent to, again, 1 mole. Therefore, it is always equivalent to 1 mole of the substance. This is sometimes called your molar mass of the substance. Molar mass is the numerically equal to the formula weight of the substance, meaning it is numerically equal always to its substance. So the atomic weight for atom of elements has the unit grams per mole. So again, ano ang atong gamiton nga units in our formula weight of the substance? It is always grams per mole or grams/mole nga unit niya. So next kids, we have 1 mole of your sodium hydroxide is 40 grams of your sodium hydroxide as NaOH. Ang Na naton is your sodium and OH is hydroxide. And your 1 mole of your acetic acid has a formula weight of 60 grams of CH3COOH, or simply your acetic acid. So 1 mole of any molecular substance contains 6.02 times 10 raised to the power of 23 molecules of that substance. So this simply means na ang aton nga formula weight or your FW of your substance is always equal and proportional to 6.0. Ang 1 mo nga formula weight of any substance is equal to 6.022 times 10 raised to the power of 23, or simply your 1 mole. Okay, again, your 1 formula weight is also equals to 1 mole, or your Avogadro's number of 6.022 times 10 raised to the power of 23. Because these are also illustrated in our table 2.5. Again, kaya makita yung molecular weight or your formula weight, amo isa. Tapos this is equivalent to 1 mole of each individual na compound, and your 1 mole is also equals to 6.022 times 10 raised to the power of 23. Next, because no simple sodium chloride molecules exist at ordinary temperatures, it is inappropriate to refer to the molecular weight of NaCl or any ionic compound. So 1 mole of an ionic compound, again, 1 mole of any ionic compounds also contains 6.022 times 10 raised to the power of 23 formula units of the substance. So recall that one formula unit of your 58.4 grams of your NaCl or your sodium chloride always contains 6.022 times 10 raised to the power of 23 or your Na ions and 6.022 times 10 raised to the power of 23 negative na chloride ions. Kaya again, for every compound mo or for every element, it is always equal to 6.022 times 10 raised to the power of 23. So, ang mole concept natin, kids, together with your Avogadro's number, kaya again, ang 1 mole. Again, kapila ko na what, ang 1 mole natin is always equal to your Avogadro's number. Ang Avogadro's number natin is always equals to 1 mole. Ang Avogadro's number natin is 6.022 times 10 raised to the power of 23. So the mole concept together with your Avogadro's number provides important connections among the extensive properties of mass of your substances, the number of moles of substance, and the number of molecules or ions. So these are summarized below. So again, ang mass natin is proportional to your moles, and your moles is proportional to your formula units. Again, and your Avogadro's number is always equals to your formula units and your moles. And your formula or your molar mass, again, a formula weight natin is also known as your molar mass, is always equal to your mass, to your grams and your mole. So, amo na ang iyang description. If kids nagasala pa kamo sa amo nga concept, mabalaan nyo na kung paano natin gamiton below in our later pages. Kay solve natin kung paano sila pangitaon. Okay? So, again, for example, you have table 2.6. 1 mole of some ionic compounds. For example, I have sodium chloride. If I will ask you kids, if you are finding your formula weight of your sodium chloride, sulat nyo anay, of course, is your formula. Ano nga itong formula kids sa sodium chloride? Your sodium is simply Na. Sodium is simply Na, and your chloride is simply Cl. If kids, tingala ka mo kung din ko na siya ginkuha, hari siya kids. Your sodium and your chloride. Or pwede man sa periodic table of elements natin below, tanawan nyo. You have your sodium. Wait, i-draw ko siya ha. Your sodium is here. Ang iyang atomic weight aring 22.990. Kitaon sa inyo da? I-zoom ko bigamay. So this is your sodium. Ara siya. And your formula, ang imong atomic mass unit or your formula weight is below it. Again, ang sodium natin contains your AMU of 22.990 or simply, round off na natin later to 23. Next, ang ato naman na chlorine is 35.4. Ari ang atong chlorine. 35.4 or 35.45. So to get your formula weight, kids, isulat natin si Na first. Na natin plakabilog, isa lang siya, kaya wala siya sa subscript sa dalong. Therefore, 1 times, pila itong tanaw ko nga for nga AMU sa imong sodium. It is 22.990 or simply 23. It is always equals to 23. 23 kay 1 times 23. Next, you have your chloride. Again nga man nag-chloride na siya, hindi chlorine. Kaya again, sa naming naton. So, remember your module 4? Sang midterms naton? If ara na siya after sang aton nga cation, meaning negative na siya, di ba? Si chlorine, positive ni si sodium. Una, gitermino yung pangalan, si cation kaysa kay anion. Di ba? So, next, kung magtupong na siya sa aton na cation, ang chlorine yung maging chloride. Same principle applies for every other negative element, okay? And you have set rules na gitudlo naman natin sa module 4 natin. So you may check and review anytime para mag-get si liwat. So your chloride, tanawon ta naman ang ato na chloride or your chlorine. Your Cl is your chlorine and it has an EMU of 35.4. 35.4. So 35.4, solve na sila. I-plus na sila to get your formula weight. So your formula weight is now equals to 58.4. 2 plus 3 is 5. 3 plus 5 is 8. Carry down all the remaining numbers. 0.4 na lang ang kulang. Therefore, carry out ang 4. Again, gina-plus mo sila to get your formula weight. So your final answer for your formula weight will be 58.4. Next, a sample with a mass of 1 mole. Again, therefore, ang 58.4 natin formula weight is always equal to your mass of 1 mole. Meaning, 58.4 grams of your sodium chloride is also your formula weight, and it is also a mass of your 1 mole of your sodium chloride. And what does it contain? It contains 1 mole of your Na ion, 1 mole of your chloride ion, and it is also equals to your Avogadro's number, which is 6.022 times 10 raised to the power of 23. Next, we have your CaCl. Paano ito naman solve yung formula weight? To solve for your formula weight of your calcium chloride, Ca natin, and your chloride. Galing kay may subscript na 2, si chloride. Pangitaon ta naman din sila sa periodic table natin. First, you have your calcium. It contains 40 atomic mass. Ara, 40. 40, butang. Pila kabilog yung subscript, isa lang. Therefore, 1 times 40. Next, your chloride. Pangitaon ta naman si chloride. Your chloride has 35.4 or 35.5. I-round off ta na lang ni 35.45, okay? 35.45 is now 35.5. 35.5. May subscript sa nga 2 kids. Therefore, ang chloride naton has 2 chloride molecules. So, 2 times 35.5. So, 35.5 is equal times 2 is equals to 71. Am I right? 40. 1 times 40 is 40. 2 times 35.5 is equals to pila? 35.5 is equals to 71. 35.5 times 2 ni siya. And if i-plus na naman sila nga duwa, therefore you will now have 111 nga formula weight. Your formula weight is now equals to 111.0. And that will be how you solve your formula weight. Same man sa ato na aluminum sulfate, okay? So, solve pagit sa aluminum sulfate para hindi na kamo maglibog. First, you have your Al2SO43. Pila ka bilog aluminum na kon? Duwa ka bilog. Al is equals to 2 times. Pangita ang talang karon ha. Wait lang gan. And pila ako na solve for? 1 times 3 is equals to 3. Solve for na kon therefore will be 3. S3. 3 times Pila ako ng oxygen? 4 times 3 is equals to, kaya again, ang tanan nga sa parentheses, ginanotan sila ganun kids, multiply. Next, your oxygen has 12 nga subscript because 4 times 3 is equals to 12. Tama? 12. So, pangitaon ta na next, iya nga atomic mass units in order for you to get your formula weight. Oxygen first, para tapusan ko. 15.999 iya nga, ang iya nga AMU. Or simply round it off to 16. 16. 12 times 16. Next, you have your sulfide. Gitaon to si S. S din si S sa periodic table naton. Sulfur is simply 32. 32, ari si sulfur ho. Wait, where is siya? Ari siya. And lastly, you have your aluminum. Ang aluminum natin, pangitaon ito naman, your Al is 27. Or kung gusto nyo, 26.98. So your 26.98 times 2 is equals to 26.98 times 2 is equals to 53.96. Next, you have 3 times 32 is equals to 74. And 12 times 16? 12 times 16 is equals to 190. And you'll have your final answer of 96.3479. 5, 7, 12, 12, 21. Why is it wrong? Yan, sorry kids, liwat-liwat. 3 gali, pati ako nagtala sa konsulat. Sorry kids, again. Then siya 74, 3 times 32 is equals to 96. Galing siya. Sorry. Okay, sorry. Next, 96 ni siya. 96. So, 0.96. Bring it down lang. Next, 3 plus 6 is equals to, pintok anay for your decimal place. 3 plus 6 is 9, plus 2 is 11. Next, 1, carry over natin, 1 plus 9. Hindi, 9 plus 9 is 18, plus 1 is 19, plus 5 is 24. Next, carry over tang atong 2, 341.96 or simply 342. And you will have your final answer of 342. Kay i-round off natin. Or 342. And this will be the aluminum weight of your, formula weight of your aluminum sulfate. Arin siya. 342.1 or simply 342 is acceptable depende sa instructions ng ating question. Pero gina-consider ko ng kids, so don't you worry. So next we'll solve for your masses of your molecules. So what is the mass in grams of your 10 million? Sorry. So next we have your masses of your molecules. What is the mass in grams of your 10 million sulfur dioxide nga molecule? Your S stands for your sulfur and your O2 is your dioxide. So 1 mole of our SO2 contains 6.022 times 10 raised to the power of 23 nga molecules and has a mass of 64.1 nga grams. So kids, if you are wondering, din ko ni nakuha si 64.1 nga Nakuha ko ni kids 64.1 grams in your formula weight. Again, SO2 naton has one sulfur, hari aton sulfur, and this is your oxygen na duwa. Again, it has a subscript of 2 which represents the number of which an element has. Kung wala siya number, meaning 1, siya understood as 1. Okay? So, 1 times, pila ato na sulfur ngayang AMU? Sulfur has 32. 32 na atomic mass. Or 32.06. Okay? 32.06 para pareho di siya kids sa aton yung libro. Pero don't worry, gusto ko i-whole number nila. Sulfur has a mass of 1 times 32.6. Hindi, round off. Tanong lang kids pa rin akong bigyan. Isang pabudyan, isang pabutang decimal points. So, 32 lang siya. Next, you have your oxygen, which has a atomic mass unit of 16. Pila ka bilog ang subscript niya. Kaya ang subscript represents oxygen, pila bilog oxygen ta, 2. 2 times 16 is equals to 32. Oxygen, 16 times 2 is 32. 32 plus 32 is equals to 64. So, dira nyo na nakuha ang aton nga atomic mass unit. Or butangan ta sa 0.6 dire. It is 32.6. And then, sorry. Dili pagbutangan siya. Hindi siya nagkuha sa 0.1. Hindi sa bookman. 15.999. Ang 15.999 is also 16. So, gin-round off na lang siya para hindi na ako ganun. Puputangan hindi, follow ta lang sa book para hindi ako magtalang. Okay? Pero, don't worry, ihatag ko ni sa inyo. Ang malapit ni sa batki multiple choice man ang atong tanan nga assessments and our exam. So, kung anong pinakalapit sa solving so that will be the correct answer. So, next, kaya ara natin na formula weight. Na-solve na sa formula weight. And you are given your Avogadro's number naman sa 10 million yan eh. Sir, 10 million kids, amo na ni siya dayon ang aton naging convert into scientific notation para hindi na akong mabudla yan. So, 10.0 times 10 raised to the power of 6. Kaya again, ang millions natin, if in scientific notation, 6 na siya. Kaya every zero represents a, naganyan ba ko sa inyo kids Every zero represents every exponent represents a zero rather. For every exponent na may ara ka, it represents a zero. So now, 10.0 times 10 raised to the power of 6 SO2 nga molecule is multiplied by your formula weight of 64.1 grams of SO2 and is divided by our Avogadro's number. So that is how you get your masses of molecules. I-multiply ang aton nga given through your formula weight and you divide it by your Avogadro's number. Your Avogadro's number is 6.0 times 20.22 times 10 raised to the power of 23. Next, you cancel all like signs, kids. Cancel all like signs. So, kapareho si sodium dioxide nga molecule. After na-cancel, you will get your answer of 1.06 times 10 raised to the power of negative 15. So, next, kids, we have your moles. Ang moles naman natin, kids, we are asking to find your, for example, how many moles of your O2 ang ara. Letter B, ang iyan naman ng O2 molecules. And letter C, your O atoms are contained in 40 grams of your oxygen gas, dioxygen, at 25 degrees Celsius. So, anong plano ta para pangitaan ta si moles of O2? O2 molecules ang O atoms nga ara sa 40 grams ng oxygen gas naton. Paano ta ni sila pangitaan? So, kids below, tuduan ta mo kung paano ni sila mapangita. So first, we construct the needed unit factors from the following equalities. First, the mass of 1 mole of your O2 is 32 grams. Meaning, ang iya molar mass of your O2 is 32. Din ko ni kids na ko ang 32. Again, your oxygen has a AMU or atomic mass unit of 16. or 15.999 rounded off to a whole number of 16. 16 times 2 is equals to 32. Therefore, your molar mass of your O2, your formula weight is 32 grams per mole. Next, letter A na siya. Letter B naman for every 1 mole sang O2 naton, may ano tagani kids? For every 1 mole nga ara sa aton O2, we have your Avogadro's number of 6.022 times 10 raised to the power of 23 nga O2 molecules. And lastly, your 1 O2 nga molecule contains 2 O atoms. Paano nakuha ang 2 O atoms? Kaya ang subscript nyo kids is 2. Therefore, may ara ka 2 ka oxygen nga atom. Simple as that. So, how do we solve for your moles of O2, your O2 molecules, and your O atoms that are contained in your oxygen gas? First and foremost, kids, if we are finding your moles of O2, again, ano obrahon naton? First, kids, to find your moles of your O2, you need to write kung ano ang ginhatag sa aton. May check nyo sa atong problem, gitaganta 40 grams. Therefore, you write your 40 grams of your O2. Next, we are finding your moles of O2. Therefore, sa babaw ni si moles of O2. Kaya usually, ara gina sa babaw kids ang aton na ginapangita. So, 1 mole of your O2 is equivalent to pila gani kids ang your formula weight or its molar mass. Kay duwa ang your oxygen, 32. 16 times 2 is equals to 32. Din ko ni siya nakuha again sa periodic table of elements naton. So, it simply lang ang ato na obrahon. Divide ta tanan sa dalong and multiply tanan sa bubok. Sino gani unahon tanay? Multiplication, Mdas law again. 40 times 1 is equals to 40. Divided by 32, we now have 1.25 mole of your O2. Next, your O2 molecules. Letter B naman siya kids ha. Letter B naman natin, what are we finding in letter B? We are finding your molecules of your O2. So your formula anay, when you are finding your mole of a element is equals to your grams of said element, grams of your element over 1 mole of said element. Letter A ni ha. Over the formula weight or your molar mass of your said element, which is in grams. Therefore, pwede siya makancel out. And sinubilin natin when you are finding your mole, si mole ang permeabilin. Okay? Mole of your given element. Next, when we are finding your molecules naman, kids, ano naman diwat gan ang ginhatag sa aton? We have your 40 grams pa din. Mo pa na siya gyapon ang aton. Pero kids, if we are finding your molecules, we will use now, hindi na ang aton nga moles, but we will use your Avogadro's number na. Hindi is 1 mole, but we are using your Avogadro's number. Ano gan Avogadro's number natin what kids? It is 6.0. 22 times 10 raised to the power of 23 of your O2 molecules because it is always equals to 1 mole. And it is divided to 32.0 grams of your O2. And nagaliwat o brown ta. Tanan nga sa babaw, i-multiply anay. And tanan nga sa dalom, i-divide dayon. Again, unahon gi-permissive multiplication before we divide everything. So, 40 times 6.02 times 10 raised to the power of 23 is equals, tapos then i-divide to 32 to find your final answer of 7.52 times 10 raised to the power of 23. So, this will be our letter A. Check. May answer na kamo dayon. Letter B, check. May answer na kamo dayon. Or we can use the number of moles of your O2 calculated in part A to find the number of your O2 molecules. Again, ari dayon, if duwa ang ginhatag sa aton sa problem, for example, ini, ipapangitaan na si moles of O2, then the molecules, we can directly solve after we answer A para sabihin natin. First, you have your O2 molecules. Ang O2 molecules natin, kids, we have may sabat na ko, di ba, si 1.25. Simple lang dahil ubrahon natin, kids. i-multiply ka lang siya kay Avogadro's number naton over 1 mole of your O2. Again, nga mangyari ka na, this is lang to cancel out ang bilin, and you will now have your 7.52 nga O2 molecule. This is an alternative if you do not want to use letter B nga solution 1. But any of this will do if you are finding your O2 molecules. And letter C na, ano ganyan brown sa letter C? You are given 40 grams of your oxygen gas, your dioxygen at 25 degrees Celsius. So you are now finding your oxygen atoms nga ara dira siya. Again, your dioxygen is amo na ang ginapangita natin. So you are given 40 grams of your dioxygen or your oxide. Next, you just simply write your Avogadro's number. Ara sa babaw, Ag na siya. Ang Ag nga niyo, may siya na Avogadro's number. Ari din sa dalam ang ato na formula weight or your molar mass. In grams. Again, your formula weight is always in grams ha. Kaya again, ang mass natin gani, ano ang iyang unit? Is grams or kilograms. Next. Isulat mo lang ang imong subscript. Anong subscript sa ato na O2? 2. Kaya nga man, may subscript nga 2 ang ato ng O2 araw. So for your O2, pila ka bilog nga oxygen? 2 O atoms divided by 1 O2 nga molecule. Simply cancel all like signs. May kapareho siya? Yes. May kapareho siya? Yes. Ano bilhin naton? Ang ginapangita nga O atom. So simply multiply tanan nga sa babaw, divide tanan sa dalam, and you will have your final answer of 1.50 times 10 raised to the power of 24. So kids, if galibog ang inyong ulo, amo lang gid ang obrahon natin kids. So MDAS law lang i-follow naton. Cancel tanan nga kapareho di sa babaw sa talong after writing it. And you will have your final answer of 1.50 times 10 raised to the power of 24. And if galibog pagid ulo ni kids, we can meet at a synchronous class anytime of the day. Wala gid kaso sa akon. Next, we have your number of atoms. Calculate the number of your hydrogen atoms in your 39.6 grams of your ammonium sulfate, which has an NH4, 2, and SO4. So your 1 mole of your NH4, SO4 has a Avogadro's number of, again, for every mole niya, may ara sa 6.02 times 10 raised to the power of 23 nga, formula units. It has a mass of 132.1 grams. So again, kids, balaan yun ako paano takwaon ang inyong nga formula units and your formula weight. Again, you just need to get your AMUs. Ang AMUs natin from your periodic table such as this. For your F, for your NH4, you have your nitrogen, apat ka hydrogen, meron ka man sa imong SO4 dayon. So, if you have total your AMS, it will be equivalent to 132.1 grams. So, next kids, ano brahon ta kay ginhatag na sa aton? Ang 39.6 grams, which is ang aton na number of ang aton nga grams of your hydrogen atoms for your ammonium sulfate. Ara na siya, si 39.6 grams of your ammonium sulfate. Ara naman ang constant naton nga Avogadro's number per every mole naton, ara 1 mole naton of your ammonium sulfate is 6.022 times 10 raised to the power of 23, and you have a mass of 132.1 grams. So these are the three given para sa aton, okay? So next, what do you have to do in order for you to calculate your number of moles? This is as follows. Kids, first you should write your given. After you have write your given, which is 39.6 grams of your ammonium sulfate. Next, you write the grams of your NH4SO4. After that, you write your moles of NH4, of your ammonium sulfate rather, than the formula units, and it will equal to your hydrogen atoms. So how do you do this? How do you write this formula? First, write the given. Ang given natin is 39.6 grams of your ammonium sulfate. So just carry it down carry it down to the formula. So you are finding your number of H atoms. Again, number of H atoms natin aton pangita ng H atoms. You are finding your H atoms. Next, now that we have your grams of NH42SO4, which is given above, we will now write your moles of of your ammonium sulfate. So for every 1 mole of your sodium sulfate, you have pila gani? Formula units natin. Kids, this is our formula unit. Ang formula unit natin is 132.1 grams of your, hindi ang imon siya nga 132 formula, hindi siya formula weight. It is your formula, formula weight siya, yes. This is your formula weight, FW. Then, formula weight because it is in grams. Diba? It is in grams. This is your formula weight. Next, now that you have your moles, ari siyang moles na to, sa babaw, you will now write your formula units. After you write your formula unit, which is simply your Avogadro's number, your formula unit is your Avogadro's number when solving your number of atoms, okay? Next, you simply write down your H atoms. Pila ka hydrogen atoms ang hara sa atom because we are calculating your hydrogen atoms diri ho. Calculating your number of hydrogen atoms. Therefore, pangita hydrogen atoms. In your NH42 na subscript, 4 times 2 is equals to pila? 8. So bring over your 8 here. You now have pila ka bilog na H atoms? 8 hydrogen atoms. Over sa dapat natin cancelon. Next, cancel nimo ang tanan nga like signs. Cancel mo si formula unit. Kaya may kapareho siya. Sino pa may kapareho natin? You have your NH4, kapareho yan eh. Sino pagid ang aton grams of your NH4, diba? Grams of your NH4, kapareho yan. Next, you have your moles of NH4. May kapareho siya raw. Babaw, dalo. Sino bilin natin? Si hydrogen atom. Amo na lang ng unit ang bilin. Then, multiply everything arat sa babaw. 39.6 times 1 times your Avogadro's number of 6.022 times 10 raised to the power of 23 times your 8 hydrogen atoms divided by 132.1 grams divided by 1 mole divided by 1 formula unit. You will have your answer now of 1.44 times 10 raised to the power of 24, and your unit, anong nabili na to? It is your hydrogen atoms, nga ari diri, therefore you have your H atoms, kaya ang iban, cancel ko na. Right? Next, you have your percent composition and your formulas of your compounds. If the formula of a compound is known, its chemical composition can be expressed as the mass percent of each element in the compound of its percent composition. For example, for your carbon dioxide molecule, your carbon dioxide, which has a formula of CO2, it contains 1 carbon atom and 2 oxygen atoms. Kaya again, ang subscript niyo sa 2 is for your oxygen. Percentage is the part divided by the whole times. So again, percentage niya times the divided by the whole and multiplied by 100. Again, ang percentage natin gets your percentage is the part divided by the whole times 100, or simply parts per 100. Simply lang atong hambalan, it is in parts per 100. So we can represent the percent composition of your carbon dioxide as follows. Your mass of your carbon over your mass of your carbon dioxide times 100% is equals to its atomic weight of your carbon over the molecular weight of your carbon dioxide. Anong kinalain ni atomic weight for the molecular weight? Kasi atomic weight if you have only one component or one element. But if it is a mixture, for example, yung combined is carbon natin kasi oxygen, in order for you to have a carbon dioxide na molecule, molecular weight na siya, it is now not called your atomic weight because it is a combination of 2 different elements, right? And next, you have to multiply it by 100. So, again, paano tanan ni siya kwaon? First and foremost, kids, if we are finding your percent in carbon, underline ko na. It is the mass of your carbon. Ara din na siya pero sa babaw. Ang mass ng carbon natin is always equivalent to its atomic weight. over the ang mass naman sa ato na carbon dioxide is equivalent to its molecular weight. So, diin takuan ang atomic weight ni carbon. We are getting the atomic weight of your carbon from your periodic table. As always, it is your atomic mass unit ng Japon that your atomic mass unit is equivalent to your atomic weight and your formula weight, and it also is your ang much dahil na gina-plus natin in order for you to get your formula weights and molecular weight. Kaya again, paring-pareho lang na sila ang mga weights. First, your carbon. Your carbon has a molecular weight of pila? 12. Therefore, you should write 12. 12. Next, the molecular weight of your carbon dioxide is pila? Ang carbon naton, di ba, may 12. Ang oxygen naton, may subscript siya nga 2. Look at the oxygen. Therefore, it is 16 times 2. 16 times 2 is equals to 32. Molecular weight na siya. So, to get your molecular weight of carbon dioxide, we plus the atomic weights of carbon and O2. So, 12 plus 32 is equals to 44. You now have your atomic mass units of your carbon and your carbon dioxide. Multiply siya dahil by 100% and you now have your final answer of 27.3%. So that is the percent of the composition of your carbon. Next, kung si oxygen naman pangitaon natin, of course, arak naman sa babaw, si oxygen natural, hindi si carbon. Di ba? Kaya babaw natin. If we are finding carbon, si carbon natural. But if we are finding oxygen sa carbon dioxide naman natin, amo naman ni ang matabo. Pilang subscripts ni oxygen sa carbon dioxide natin? 2. So, you now have 2 times its atomic weight. 16 times 2 ni siya, right? Times 100. So, 16 times 2 is equal to 32 divided by 44. Ang 44, as explained there, kids, is the molecular weight of your carbon dioxide. 12 plus 32 is equals to 44. 2 times 32. 2 times 16 is equal to 32. So, 32 divided by 44 times 100 is equals to 72.7% of your oxygen. So, kids, in simple terms, when you get your percent composition, you just divide your element, kung ano ginapangita ng element, over its mixture, and then multiply it by 100. If I am finding carbon, its percent composition is 27.3%, and your oxygen has a 72.7% composition in percent. So that is how you solve for your carbon, your percent composition. So 1 mole of your carbon dioxide is 44.0 grams, and it contains 1 mole of your carbon atom, which is 12.0. 2 moles of your oxygen atom is 32 grams. So we could therefore have used these masses in the preceding calculation. Again, din ko nakuha si 12, periodic table. Ang 44, din ko siya nakuha. Din-plus ko lang ang atomic weight ni carbon kag ni ni dioxygen or duwa ka bilog ng oxygen. And then ko nakuha si 32. Of course, periodic table yapon 16 times 2 is equals to 32. Kaya again, ang oxygen has an atomic weight of 16. Pila ka bilog subscripta, duwa, therefore 16 times 2. 32 na siya. So we could therefore have this masses again para makuha ang ating solvents. Only the units are different. In example 2.11, we shall base our calculation on 1 mole rather than 1 molecule. Now, mabase naman sa mole, not on your molecule. So, an example, 2.11, your percent composition. Calculate the percent composition of your HNO3. So, we first calculate the mass of 1 mole as in an example of 2.7. Then we express the mass of each element as a percent of its total. So first, kids, amo ginuna niya pero nag-obrahan ba sa percent composition, kids. So, we find the formula. Amo gina siyang technique ng paper niya. You have your H and O3. Then, for every subscript na ara sa ating kids, it denotes the number of elements that ang ara sa imong mixture. So your hydrogen, pangitaan ko sa periodic table of elements natin, has 1. Kaya again, basta wala ka digan subscript sa dalom, it is understood as 1. Pila din yung AMU? 1. 1 times 1. Next, nitrogen naman natin, pangitaan ko sa periodic table of elements, si nitrogen. Find your letter N sa ating periodic table of elements. Find the letter N. And kids, don't worry, hindi ko na ipagpasaulosin yung periodic table of elements natin. Nitrogen natin, yung atomic mass unit is 14. Pila nga ito nitrogen? 1. Kaya wala siya sa subscript, it is understood as 1. 1 times, pilang yung atomic mass units, kids? 14. Next, your oxygen. Pila yung subscript? 3. Therefore, you have 3 na oxygen. Times pila yung atomic mass units ng oxygen natin? 16. So 1 times 1 is equals to 1. 14 is equals to 14. And 3 times 16 is equals to 48. Amo gini permi dapat pang taon to permi. And you now have your formula weight or your mass of 1 mole of HNO3 is equals to 63 grams. 63 man di siya. This is your formula weight. Basta when you are always finding your percent composition, pangitaan tagid permi, ang aton nga formula weight. So next, you have your percent in hydrogen, percent in hydrogen, nitrogen, and oxygen. Same ang man ang aton na formula gyapon as stated sa babaw natin example mo siya gyapon. Pila ka hydrogen ang ara sa aton? 1, di ba? 1 ka gina. Therefore 1 di siya ba? Pila ang imong molecular weight or your mass of HNO3? Again, it is the total of your mixture, 63. Ara 63 times 100%, you now have 1.6% of your hydrogen. Next, oh, man Japon. For your nitrogen, pilang nitrogen natin di kanina? 14. When you are finding your hydrogen or your specific element nga ara sa imong mixture sa percent composition, butang mo lang kung sino ginapangita. For this case, si nitrogen din pangita, therefore 14 sa babaw. And your total nga formula weight or your mass, ara sa dalong, times 100, you now have 22% of your nitrogen. And lastly, oxygen naton pila? 48. Therefore, 48 butang to di sa babaw. Ari si oxygen. And pila ang total ni HNO3 naton? HNO3 natin, yung total is of course 63. 48 divided by 63 times 100 is equals to 76.2%. For a grand total of 100%, that is how you know that is your percent composition. Kung maglapaw di siya usually sa 100, that is not correct. Again, this is an accurate composition of your percent on which any of the substance, kung sino sila pinakadamo. This is how you total your percentage, okay? So now your nitric acid is now 1.6% hydrogen, 22.2% nitrogen, and 76.2% oxygen by mass. And all samples of pure HNO3 have this composition according to the law of definite proportions. Again, ang law of definite proportions, we have discussed this in our midterms na. So we find na sa I expect you to know that na, di ba? So, a problem solving tip sa aton. Percentage must add to 100%. Round of errors may not cancel. However, the total such as 99.9% or 100.1% may be obtained in calculations. Again, if it is 99.9% or 100.1%, it is still considered correct. Basta hindi na maglapaw sa dira nga mga averages. As an alternative method of pure calculation, if we know all the percentages except one, we can subtract their sum from 100%, obtain the remaining value. Pero don't worry, kids, rarely na nagatabo ka usually ang ato na equations will, kung tsakto mo sabat, will always be obtained as 100% sa percent composition natin. So next, Have you remembered, kids, ang ato nang discuss sa midterms ta, module 4 ninyo, your empirical formula or your simplest formula? Diba, tandaan, ginhambay ko sa inyo, muna siya ang ginakuha antas ng LCD or least common denominator. Now, this is how we solve for your empirical formula or your simplest empirical formula. For a compound, it is the smallest whole number ratio of atoms present. It is the smallest whole number ratio of atoms present. For molecular compounds, the molecular formula indicates the actual number of atoms present in a molecule of the compound. It may be the same as the simplest formula or else the sum whole number multiple of it. For example, the simplest molecular formula for your water, H2, are both H2O. Again, it is the simplest para sa aton is H2O. However, for hydrogen peroxide, kids, H2O2 na sa. The empirical formula is HO and the molecular formula is H2O2. Pero ang H2O, kids, may siya common denominator? Wala. Diba? Pero ang H2O2 natin, pwede ito pa ma-simplify? Yes. Because 2 divided by 2 is equals to 1. Tama? Or we simply get the least common denominator nila and it is also 1. Can we divide this 2 by 1? Yes, of course. So before we proceed, the kids, how do we do this? We only not look at your subscripts, meaning hindi lang subscript ating natanawon, but their compositions and overall. For example, your hydrogen and oxygen may have 50% and their 50% H2 and ang 50% man ng oxygen, or depende if what is the composition of your mixture. So each year, thousands of new compounds are made in laboratories or discovered in nature. One of the first steps in characterizing a new compound is the determination of its nature. One of the first steps in characterizing a new compound is the determination of its percent composition. So we now know nga paano isolve ating percent composition, di ba? Kaunti lang ang atomic weight of each element from its molecular weight. Tama? Then we divide it sa iyang molecular weight and multiply it by 100. Then we get your percent composition na. Next, a qualitative analysis is performed to determine which element is present in the compound. Then, a quantitative analysis is performed. Magamba ka mo quantitative, kids, again. Intudlo ko sa measurements, have you remembered? Magamba ka mo quantitative, it is the numerical value of your analysis. Is performed to determine the amount of each element. Once the percent composition of a compound is known, the simplest formula can be determined. So how do you determine your simplest formula? In this example 2.12, we teach you on how you will determine your simplest formula. So first, your compounds containing your sulfur and oxygen are serious air pollutants. They represent the major cause of your acid rain. Analysis of a sample of your pure compound reveals that it contains 50.1% of your sulfur and 49.9% of your oxygen by mass. What is the simplest formula of your compound? Ano ginhatag sa atin? Gets 50.1% of your sulfur and 49.9% of your oxygen by mass. So your plan, ano plano natin? 1 mole of atoms of any element. Again, for every mole of your element, it is equivalent to your Avogadro's number of 6.022 times 10 raised to the power of 20. So, kita niyo yung pattern so far, kids. Ginagamit agad sa ato ng chemistry and sa solving sa ang Avogadro's number. So the ratio of moles of atoms in any sample of a compound is the same as the ratio of atoms in that compound. So again, we may use the calculation carried out in 2 steps. So let's consider that when your 100.0 grams of your compound contains 50.1 grams of your sulfur and 49.9 grams of your oxygen. When combined, it is in total of 100.0 grams. Diba? We calculate the number of moles of atoms of each. Step 2. We then obtain a whole number ratio between these numbers that gives the ratio of atoms in the sample, and hence the simplest formula will be of that compound will be the result. So again, step 1 ta anay. May 100 ko nga grams. So 100 nga na, ginhatag sa akon si 50.1 grams of sulfur and 49.9 grams of your oxygen. Pangitaon ko anay, ang mole sang akon na S atoms or sulfur atoms, and pangitaon ko man ang mole sang akon na oxygen atoms. Okay? So first, right, pangitaon ta na si sulfur. Okay? Sulfur naton, pila ginhatag ta? 50.1, right? Sulat niyo 50.1. Next, sulat niyo ang 1 mole sang inyong S atom is always equal to pila. Check natin liwat sa periodic table of elements. Sulfur, its atomic mass unit is 32.06. Am I right? Yes. So it is 32.06 rounded off to 32.1. 32.1 grams of your sulfur na dayon ang ibutang tadi. May kapareho tang units. Of course, may ara. Cancel all like signs. After canceling your all like signs, kids, you now have a 1 unit lang na bilin. You are finding your mole of S atoms, bilin ta mole of S atoms. 50 multiplied by 1 divided by 32.1, it will be the equivalent of 1.56 mole of your S atom. You now have found the mole, the number of moles in your S atom or your 50.1 grams of S atoms. You now need to find your mole of your O atoms or your oxygen. Pila ginhatag sa aton, kids? Grams of your oxygen. 49.9 grams of oxygen has been given. Next, sulat ta ang aton na formula of your 1 mole of O atoms is equals to pila gani, kids, ang yaka oxygen again? 16? Yes, 16 na siya. So it is 15.999 is equals to 16 if rounded off to a whole number. Am I correct? Yes. So now that we have the formula, cancel all like signs again. Cancel, cancel. 49 times 1 divided by 16 is now 3.12 oxygen atoms. And now that we have finished step 1, tapos na ta step 1 yung manaling aton answer, it is 1.56 and 3.12 na oxygen atoms. Step 2, now that we know that 100.0 grams of the compound contains 1.56 mole of your S atoms and 3.12 of your mole of your O atoms, you obtain a whole number ratio between these numbers that gives the ratio of atoms in the simplest formula. So kids, ang ginahambal lang di sa aton, i-divide nyo, kids, ang inyong mixture of sulfur dioxide, ang SO2 naton, sa iya nga pinakanubo. Kids, sino ang pinakanubo? Si 1.56 or si 3.12? Of course, it is 1.56. Therefore, your denominator or your least common denominator is 1.56. Or ang imo nga sa dalom sang fraction, para simple sa aton sa dalom sang fraction. So 1.56 divided by 1.56 is equals to 1. And 3.12 divided by 1.56, try nyo sa calculator nyo, it is exactly 2. Therefore, the least common denominator of your sulfur, sulfur oxide, is now SO2. This will be your final answer, and this is how you determine your simplest formula. So again, kids, this is the sulfur and oxygen nga simplest formula and how you solve your simplest formula. So, kung amo na ni siya, kids, ang pinakaklaro nga way para i-solve naton. Or you can use your tabular form in order for you to solve your simplest formula. Ari, butang ko si S kag si O because sa problem naton, you have your sulfur and oxygen. Am I right? Butang ta si S kag si O naton, ari sila. Next, ang ginhihatag sa aton sa problem is 50.1 kuno si sulfur and oxygen has 49.9 nga grams. Next, simply divide in tabular form. Sa fraction nila, ang iya, kids, nga given nga grams, 50.1 given siya and 49.9 is given. You divide it simply by its atomic mass unit found in your periodic table of elements. Sulfur is, again, 32.1 and your oxygen is 16. Simply divide them. You will also get 1.56 and 3.12. This is your step 1. Step 1. Okay? Step 2 natin dahil divide mo sila sa pinakanubo. Yes, sino pinakanubo is 1.56 or si 3.12? Of course, it is 1.56. Kung sinong pinakanubo, siya gito may butang sa dalong diha sa aton na fraction sa pinakadalong siya butang. Therefore, may 1.56 kadi. 1.56 kadi. Divide it by its relative number of atoms sa babaw. And you will have your final answer. Your 1s and your 2.00 ka oxygen. SO2 will be your simplest formula or your empirical formula. So that is how simple our simplest formula works. So this tabular format provides a convenient way to solve your simplest formula, as the next example illustrates. So ang mga kids, ang human Japon ang imong galing hindi na siya duwa, tatlo ng atong solvon. So next kids, in our example 2.13, simply manigyapon, it is your simplest formula. But instead of two elements present in your mixtures, tatlo na ang elements natin sa mixture natin. So at 820.882 grams of your sample of an ionic compound is found to contain 6.022 grams of your sodium, 8.474 grams of your sulfur, and 6.336 grams of your oxygen. What is its simplest formula? So again, same man siya sa ato na example 2.12. 2.13 na ni siya, same man siya gapon. But instead of two nga elements, let's make sure tatlo na. First, write your elements. Ano gan elements na? Na, S, and O. Right? Pangitaan nyo dahil ang ilang given. Ang relative mass of the elements is what? 6.072, 8.474, araw sila. And your oxygen is 6.336. Next, divide them by the relative number of atoms or divide them by their atomic weight. So, pilang atomic weight ni sodium? Na naton pangitaon ta. Atomic weight ni Na naton is 23 araw. 22.990. Round it off to its whole number is 23. Am I right? Therefore, it is 23. 23 dire. 23 man dire. Next, you have your sulfur, which is 32.1. Sulfur naton, ari di kids, 32.1. As 32.06 is rounded off to 32.1. Therefore, ari siya. Again, you divide the relative number of atoms or the relative mass of your elements by their atomic weight. Divide your mass by their weight. And lastly, pila kay oxygen. Again, si oxygen, 16. 15.999 is rounded off to 16. Therefore, may 16 din sila. And you now have your answers of 0.264, 0.264, and 0.396. Next, divide them by their smallest number. Sino di pinakagamay? Si 0.396 or si 0.264. Of course, ang 200 mas gamay kay 300, di ba? 0.264 therefore ang tanan ni ara sa dalo. And kids, na nga ara sila ni divide mo sila by sa ilang relative number of atoms. Divide them by the smallest number, ang relative number of atoms. And 0.264 is now divided by 0.264 is equals to 1, same as below. And 0.396 divided by 0.264, try it in your calculator. The answer will be 1.50. And lastly, you convert the fractions to whole numbers. This is how simple you get your simplest formula. Convert the fractions to its whole number, or para simplisin nyo kids, para minsindihan nyo kids, ihiligay nun ko i-divide nyo siya, multiply nyo na siya kids sa integer or its smallest possible na factor nga pwede mo i-apply. I-divide, i-multiply nyo siya sa pinaka-simple kids nga number nga pwede mo siya i-multiply. Amo na siya kids sa ginapangita naton, multiply it by its integer, or kung sila gay nun, kung sinogid ang pwede i-multiply nga pinakagamay. Amo gina siya kids ka simple. So anong pinakagamay nga pwede mo usually i-multiply? In order for it to get a whole number nga answer. Again, dapat ang imogid ng elements, ang ilang nga masabat di is whole number, okay? So, si 1, i-multiply ko kay 2, maging 2, di ba? Si 1 ako naman isang diri sa ako, no? I-multiply ko kay 2, same man. Si 1.50, ano brahon ko siya sa para ma-multiply ko siya sa whole number? Pwede siya kay 2? Of course, kung pwede siya kay 2, 2 ko siya i-multiply. Therefore, maging 1.50 times 2 is equals to 3. Okay? And that is how you get your smallest whole number ratios. So that is how simple you get your simplest formula. So the ratio of atoms in the simplest formula must be a whole number ratio by definition. To convert, again, araw, nga din convert ko to fractions to whole numbers aring explanation. The ratio of atoms in the simplest formula must be a whole number by definition. Again, you cannot have a subscript of decimal places. Dapat whole number yun siyang ratio. To convert the ratio of 1 is to 1 is to 1.5 to a whole number ratio, each number in the ratio was multiplied by 2, which gave the simplest formula of Na2S2O3. And that will be your final answer of Na2S2O3. That is how you get your simplest formula. So, is it simple, kids? Yes, of course. And this is a tip on how you use your integers. So next, a mass of a compound is burned and did. Why? Diri na siya gali. Yeah, ignore lang, ignore. Next, we have example 2.14. Again, it is in your percent composition.